I'm going to give you a warning here and let you know right off the bat that this is a very esoteric video. It is not for everyone, and the information that I share in it is going to be polarizing. It is going to be hard to look at for some people to realize that maybe in our reality, there are that of mass thought forms. There are the accumulation of millions of people around the planet thinking similar thoughts, feeling similar emotions at similar times, that then provokes into it certain things that are allowed into our collective consciousness. There may be people on the planet that understand that when people stay in a certain level of consciousness, they then are only playing to a certain level of their own power, and they're much easier to control. There may be people that understand on the planet that if you can control what people pay attention to, like Hollywood movies, like certain music that has certain frequencies in it mixed with certain imagery, certain music videos. Have you ever watched one of the music videos of some really well-known songs and been like, what the hell? There are times when you can very clearly see that there is some influence in Hollywood or in the music industry that has some very dark symbolism that you may look at and go, whoa, that's very artistic. But on the other hand, go, whoa, that's extremely dark. What is going on here? And then what happens is a lot of times people will project that onto the artist themselves. Personally, I believe that many times the artist that's doing the songs and creating the music sometimes may not have complete control over what the music video is doing. And it may be someone else that's kind of directing it, infusing that symbolism in there, and they're just kind of like the one that's performing. Not making excuses, I'm just kind of like also giving my opinion of that kind of perspective. The idea behind this comes from a understanding of mass thought forms. So I made a video before on thought forms. This is about mass thought forms and something more specifically called pendulums. I have a tattoo on this idea called pendulums. The idea of a pendulum, I'm not talking about a pendulum that you just like, is it yes or no? Is it spinning clockwise, or not one of those like divination tools? I'm talking about pendulums in the form of what are called thought forms, mass thought forms. And the idea is that anytime you get a lot of people focused on a certain idea, it creates a thought form around this idea that even though we may not physically be able to see our thoughts, they still have an energetic structure. And when you get many people thinking of the same thought or of the same person or whatever it is, it creates this group collective thought form. And what happens is when you fight what is called the pendulum or the thought form, you feed it. It grows even stronger. When you agree with it, you feed it. It grows even stronger. Now, there are positive pendulums or thought forms, and there are negative pendulums or thought forms. Most of the ones we continue to see in reality, unfortunately, are negative. They are they at least take the control of people's minds. For example, whether you are Republican or Democrat, if you are polarized on either side of the spectrum, you are feeding the other side. If you're a Republican who hates Democrats or a Democrat who hates Republicans, it feeds the energy. It's being projected out. And then what happens is people get extremely triggered. They get extremely angry, especially if they become a part of the pendulum. If they start to identify with it and say, yes, this is what I agree. This is what I believe in. And then what happens is they feel that, and they fuel that even more. What if, it's gonna sound conspiracy theory, what if there were people that understood that when people are feeding either side of the system, their energy is being distracted from what really actually matters? Like, we're like, you are either this or this for the most part. I know there's like different, you could be libertarian or this or that, but just using this as an example, whether you're on either side of the spectrum, it's feeding the system. It's feeding the belief system, whether you fight it or are for it, which may be distracting people from their true power, with realizing there could be a third door, a third option. If you go to a sports team, the idea behind this pendulum idea is you go to a sports game, there you are inside the sports game, and then somebody else you're really passionate about your team. You identify with that team. Oh, I want them to win, because it's not just the team winning, you are a part of it. We won. We won the game. We won the soccer match. When in actuality, the only thing that really happened is like people kicked this thing around or whatever, and someone won, but we identify with it. We get fueled, and then people will even fight in the crowd over these different pendulums. Which is funny, because people may fight in a crowd and they may think they're having their thoughts. Now, one of the reasons people like going to live events is because there's a mass thought form that exists that you get fueled by. The challenge is that many people get fueled by it, but also the negative side of it is it also drains you of energy. A lot of times you can feel negative afterwards. Now, not always. Sometimes you can enjoy. There's not like pendulums are meant to be avoided at all costs, because, I can go to a UFC match. Some of you may listen to that and make, Aaron watches UFC, oh my God, it's so dark. No, but when I go to a live event for that, there is a certain energy there. And it's a certain, you do get fueled by it. But also the next day, I might be a little bit tired, to be honest. Now here's the funny thing about two people that are fighting for their pendulum, for their thought form. I like this team, I like this team. Then what happens is they fight or something, or they argue. If you were to take these two people and put them on Antarctica, and even though they hated the other person's team, you know how much more they would have in common? Like, imagine they went to another star system where there's like jellyfish beans that are like jellyfish beans that are like floating around them. And then they look and they see another human. First off, they feel really connected. Oh my God, another human, not a jellyfish bean that's going around. And then what happens? Oh, you like football? I like football. What's your team? Your team is this, your team is that. Screw you. It'd be funny, it'd be silly, but they have way more in common than they think. It's just that the pendulum, in a way, is getting them fueled up, and then they separate themselves, because that's what the pendulum does. The pendulum likes that kind of confrontation. Now, you talk about that as well, think about pendulums in the form of, the analogy I like to use as well is, imagine you are driving down a street and someone cuts you off. Someone cut me off. And then it's like there's anger there. And you could say, I'm feeling anger. Now, on one hand, it could be childhood stuff. Sometimes people are passive aggressive on the road, because it's very easy to be kind of aggressive. Or what you'll do is somebody may cut you off, or you may cut someone else off, and you slow down just to piss that person off. That's called passive aggressive. But also at the same time, there may be thought forms literally on the street that you are driving through, and when you get triggered, you tie onto the thought form, and then you feel that energy. Because remember, thoughts are literally energetic structures, energetic things. So they're literally floating around different spaces based on the accumulative thoughts that are there. Now, I'm going to share with you this perspective that's also going to be esoteric, that has to do with this place that I'm in right now. I'm in LA, Los Angeles, for a month. I want to share with you why, when I am traveling, I would prefer to stay somewhere where it's like an Airbnb or a place where a lot of people are coming through, rather than one person that lives there and then leaves, and then you get to be in that house. Here's the idea. It's going to sound esoteric, but I put some thought into this. When you have a space, the accumulated energy of the space is dependent on the people that are inside this space that are continually thinking and feeling certain thoughts and emotions. And when someone lives in a space, so like somebody that lives in this house normally, they then left for 6 weeks because I paid a certain amount of money to be here, and they left, went to their other house, and now I'm renting this. Now, one thing I noticed is that when I came here, it took me about 2 or 3 days to completely clear the energy, to make it my own. I could smell kind of like the cologne, I could smell the energy. And what I realize is that when people live somewhere and they're there every day thinking similar thoughts, feeling similar emotions, it's like that energy is able to accumulate. It's able to build up in that space. Now what happens is, what I had to do is I do some pretty esoteric practices. One thing I do is I put a golden orb around my bed using the power of intention. I clean the energy around. Then what I do is every night I do that, and it builds over time, and it results in rejuvenated sleep. It's kind of an esoteric concept, I know, but I've been doing it for years. But I bring in the intention of sleeping incredible. I bring in the intention of allowing divine energy to flow through, to remove negative thought forms, negative energies for my day. I give permission and ask for like assistance from my spiritual guides, my higher selves, to help me remember my dreams, things like that. So it's like a bubble of intention around my bed. The thing is before I came to this house, there was someone else that was sleeping there for maybe months, maybe even thinking very different thoughts, maybe feeling very different emotions, maybe going through something in their life. So it took me a few days to clean the energy using sage, using intention. And I did eventually. I didn't know if I would be able to, honestly. There was one time like 2 years ago, where I stayed at this place in Vegas, where I could tell it was someone that lived in the house that literally just left because I rented it on Airbnb. And I couldn't even sleep in the master bedroom because I could feel that energy. And also there was a Wi-Fi router like parked right in front of the bed, and I was like, I wasn't feeling that. So I slept in the guest bedroom. I slept in like this small bed in a guest bedroom. And then I eventually left the house because long story. But basically, eventually, yeah, I realized that that person wasn't actually supposed to be Airbnb in their house, and I ended up leaving the house altogether, and it worked out well. But in this situation, I had to clean the energy, and then I realized, I was like, why don't I feel this when I go to regular Airbnbs? Well, that's when you have a lot of people. Yes, more people may be coming in and going out, but they don't have time to really accumulate the thought forms. They don't have the time to accumulate the thoughts and emotions they're feeling into the space. Is that making sense? So the difference is that it felt, so once I cleared the energy, it feels completely different now. And now I'm all about it. It feels really good. However, the accumulated thought forms of what you are thinking and feeling continuously exists within your space. One reason I'm traveling a lot right now is because I'm going through a massive transformation in my life energetically. I'm doing more live events. I'm not just making YouTube videos. I'm traveling, and by doing that, it's getting me into new neuro associations in my mind, which also results in me thinking and feeling differently and not falling back to the old pattern of the past self. Because when I'm thinking and feeling certain thoughts in my old house, in my house in Austin, which by the way, I believe I'm thinking higher quality thoughts. I'm studying things. I'm studying mysticism, esoteric ideas. I'm like passionate about what I'm doing, but I get into the same routine of the house, same neuro associations over and over again, building a certain thought field in my house. Sometimes there's a pattern to stay within that identity. So what I did and what I know is by traveling, I've been traveling a lot. I lived in Sedona for 3 weeks. I'm in LA for a month. I'm going to New York for a week. I'm coming back here. New neuro associations, new thought forms, new thought fields that also allow me to get inspired and creative. The tattoo artist that I go to here in LA, I have a whole bunch of new tattoos. He's incredible. He's really artistic, and he right now, I go back to him on Monday for another session. Right now, he is in Mexico City, and he's going there specifically for creativity, and because it's his girlfriend's birthday, but also creativity. And he was super excited to take photos, to get inspired, to see that. I was telling him about like textiles, like tiles, like the Mexican tiles that just have all this culture and color in it. He just going there and being in the thought forms of the ancient sacred places. He's going to that of the Mayan pyramids. I don't think you can see that. But anyways, there's you can kind of see. He's going to the Mayan pyramids and going to different places that have certain energy fields. And what happens is, because of the thought forms, like if you live in a major city like New York or LA, in the city there can be a lot of energy because there's a lot of people that have accumulated thoughts and emotions within a specific space. When you go to the mall, there's very different fields of energy there than when you go to the park, when you go out to nature. That's why nature can be so rejuvenating. Now, one of the things it talks about when you read about this idea of pendulums, which comes from a book called Reality Transurfing, is that the way that you fight a pendulum is you don't actually fight it. You observe it. You let it be there. And from that neutral place, you're neither feeding it nor rejecting it. So you become aware of social conditioning. For me, I've become aware of the social conditioning within my life. The social conditioning of, maybe I do want to go watch UFC or something, but not get sucked in. I can be aware of it, enjoy it, but not get sucked into it. A lot of people, when they feel fear, they're looking to authority outside themselves to tell them what to think and do. It's a loss of diffusion of power. So you might think, how do I practically use this idea? It's kind of cool. How do I actually use it? One thing that I've done in my life that has completely transformed the way that I show up in the world is I focus more on my own thoughts, my own feelings, and taking ownership over my own space. I become aware of the thoughts I'm thinking and the pendulums that I may be a part of. There are pendulums around everything. There's a pendulum around this YouTube channel. Now, I believe it's a positive pendulum, at least that's my intention. But when you get a lot of people focused on something, and a lot of people doing certain types of work, that's the power also of group live events. When you do a live event and you get hundreds of people in a room getting the mind-heart coherence, it creates an energy field. And what happens is as people start feeling safe within that energy field, people start popping. It's an energetic thing that's hard to explain, but every event I've done, that's what happens. People start popping, not because I'm so incredible and I say the right things at the right moment and people just start popping. People come into these live events feeling very safe and they feel like, I think in many ways they know me because they've watched a lot of my YouTube videos. Then you get hundreds of people meditating, bringing the energy from their head into their heart, increasing the heart field, also focused on healing and letting go of the past. Their frequency begins to elevate and then people start popping into different realizations, different levels of consciousness, different vibrations. So the power in this is understanding that the people you surround yourself with, their thought forms may also be rubbing off on you. If you're around people that don't believe that you can do what you want to do, if you are believing and care about what they think, it may be keeping you in the box that they've kept you in. It may be keeping them in that box because they're afraid you're going to leave them. You may be subconsciously afraid you're going to leave them. This is why it is so, what's interesting even about my friend group, you talk about thought, there are thought forms, and we talked in a little bit about it in a prior video about what's called morphic resonance. This idea that there's this connection of a morphic field between you and other people in your life. Systems of family systems, the morphic resonance between you and your friend group, the morphic resonance between you and the job you work for. And what happens is until you become aware of that energy and what may be familiar, which a lot of times is familial, reminds me of family. That's why you may not have your dad and your mom around you all the time right now, but you create similar dynamics because it's within your morphic field. It's within this field around your body. Now, when you are around your friends, there's a morphic field around all of you that connect you guys together, even if you're thousands of miles apart. And that connection between you, if they don't want you to succeed and you feel a loyalty to them, it could hold you in where you are, which is why sometimes creating some separation can be powerful, so you can put it in the direction of what and where you want to go. So the thought forms you continuously think and feel that you believe are your own may be many times these mass thought forms, and there may be people on the planet that understand that when you can control the narrative, when you control, like you talk about that of The Simpsons, for example. Many people say The Simpsons are able to predict reality. Are they? Do you believe The Simpsons can actually predict reality in the future? Or could it be that the future is not set? There are many potential variations of the future that exist. There are millions of people that watch the show The Simpsons. Could it be that there are certain symbols and certain things that are planted within the show itself, which then you get millions of people watching that, feeling certain emotions, or watching that, or being entertained by it? Television gets you into an alpha brainwave state, literally is impacting you in a hypnotic state. Millions of people watching these things happen. Then it's within the field of millions of people in the collective consciousness, then it allows that to happen in our reality. It, in a way, isn't predicting reality, it is influencing reality. Think about that. What if there are people that understand that having mass amount of thoughts focused in that direction can influence reality in that kind of way. It could be that there are people on the planet, I mean, you talk about these ancient, like these underground societies that understand and study esoteric knowledge, 33rd degree Masons and all that stuff. And I have also known someone in my life that was a part of that. And I've heard some very interesting things. There's some very interesting esoteric beliefs that there are there. But it does have to do with esoteric things like the mastermind principle of many people focused on certain things. It does have to do with this idea of thought forms, group intention. And what happens is that brings certain things, if you can control the narrative of that, which is why they believe, oh, when people start to become a certain level of success, they get invited into some Illuminati thing. There are people that believe that because sometimes I talk like this. They're like, oh my God, Aaron did it. He did the thing with his fingers. He's bought out now. Come on. Is that really what you think? Maybe this is just a very common mudra. Like, I'm looking, they're outside this Airbnb. There's this little hand that's like this. And it's like a meditation hand. I could look at that and be like, Illuminati, ha. The dude that was just an Illuminati. The point is, don't go that far down. Conspiracy theories, there could be some truth in some of it, but maybe not all of it. That's why you gotta use your discernment. Now, when it comes to thought forms though, when it comes to movies, I mean, I can't say this necessarily because I've said it before and I got in trouble for saying it, but there was at one time a talk that came out by a specific person about something that could happen in the future in like 2020. And that was like 5-6 years ago before that. And it was talked about this thing that could happen, blah, 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 blah. And then it happened 5 years later. Was this person predicting it? Or were they infusing the idea of something that could have either been influenced to happen or some form of negative intention there? Who knows? But I don't believe there is a set future. This future is going to happen no matter what. I'm predicting the future. There is no the future. There are certain cycles and patterns within history that do tend to repeat themselves. However, if you can control the thoughts and feelings of a mass amount of people, you can then control the kind of things that happen and allow itself within the collective consciousness. So let's bring this a step deeper. There's this idea that comes from a book that's called, or it's not just one book, but Dolores Cannon has that of 17 or 19 books that are all about people in what's called QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique, people in a deep level of brainwave activity where their higher self comes through, and their higher self comes through and can give them certain information. Now, through thousands of people all over the world, none of which knew each other, there were some very interesting themes that came through. One of them was about their life. You know, a lot of times people would talk about their lives, the relationship in their life, even the trauma they went through, why they went through that, how it's helped them to grow. And what happens is there's also this perspective where the people that went through these different things and grew from it, and people from their life, sometimes they would incarnate with like their mom or their dad, who may actually have been like their brother and their sister in a past life. And there may be different plane of different roles there to learn different things, but one consistent thing through thousands of people all over the world that said this through it's not Dolores Cannon saying it, it's through the clients, is that they came here to be a part of the shift in consciousness that's happening on the planet right now. There were different, what's called waves of volunteers, called the 3 waves of volunteers. Some came in like the 40s and 60s, or the 60s, and some came in the 80s, and then now the kids are all like super freaking enlightened and shit, and have super they're like super evolved in a way, much more open. And what it said though, is that for a long time on our planet, there's been a certain level of people, like we've been asleep. But what we do is we wanted to change the trajectory of our planet. Now, what it said in these books is that back when the nuclear bomb was let go of and released in Japan back in the day, that created a ripple that went through not just our reality, but the universe itself. Now, the rule with this reality that we live in on Earth is that we have free will to experience what we want as a collective consciousness. And us individuals coming in on this, incarnate in, we forget who we are to remember who we are, to have the experience of life, because at higher levels, we're eternal spiritual beings that know that. We forget that when we come here. It's why it makes it so challenging. Now, what happened is when that bomb went off back in the day, there was an energetic call that was put out from the planet itself that said, hey, the trajectory, the timeline we are on is I'm going to be destroyed, like Mother Gaia, like the earth is going to be destroyed. And what happened was there was a call that was put out, and then souls that felt a connection to earth were called to go through the process of forgetting who they are, to remember who they are, but we wanted to make a change on the planet. Now, the reason being is there is free will here. You forget who you are to remember who you are, but we can't influence the system. You could say, well, why don't aliens just land and give us the free technology and save us? It's not the way it works. You must play according to the game of Earth if you want to come here. So instead, what we've done is forgotten who we are to remember who we are, and many people, if you're watching this video now, then you're most likely one of them, have come here to live your purpose and to be, in a way, an antenna of high vibrational energy that can influence people in a very positive, powerful way, just by being here. So a lot of what some of our books talk about, just like the energy of being here, following your purpose, of the people you interact with, it elevates them in certain ways. But what we did is we decided to come here so that we could increase our own frequency, which would then increase the planet's frequency to put us on more optimal timelines where we didn't destroy ourselves. Now, what if there are people on the planet that have more negative intention, that understand that in order for something bad to happen to the collective consciousness, they must first off have it agreed or showed at subconscious levels? This is what some people believe happens in certain Hollywood movies and certain music. You get a lot of people singing the same songs in a similar frequency. You got a lot of people watching a specific movie that's literally showing you what the intention is to bring into the collective consciousness. Many people are watching it and energetic saying, yes, I'm entertained, I'm entertained, I'm entertained. And then it's like they're showing us what they're doing, and then there's an agreement on a certain level, and then it's allowed to actually come into our reality. This is more esoteric perspective without being too conspiracy theory-ish. But what if there's free will within our reality, and if we're doing what we can to elevate our frequency to influence the subconscious of the collective, what if there are people that do it in the negative? And what if by having certain news outlets always project, you ever realize 99.9% of everything you've ever seen on the news is completely negative? Why is that? Everything is negative. We are so, you probably never even asked yourself that question because it's just the normal. Everything is fear. You look around, somebody died today, somebody fucking killed themselves, blah, 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 blah. All this fear, 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 fear. That's normal. It's like just numb to it. That's the way it is. No, that's the way we've conditioned to be. That's the pendulum that wants you in fear, because when you're in fear, you're much easier to control. You're much more likely to put more fear into the world. And then you can feed someone else's agenda. But the power is in us becoming aware of the pendulums, us observing our thoughts, us observing how we're feeling, and realizing that we get to choose where we put our energy. And what I recommend you do is start paying attention to your own field of energy. Pay attention to your own space of where you live. Pay attention to the accumulated thoughts you're thinking, emotions you're feeling, and start setting the intention to put more barriers. Not barriers like I got to put a wall around myself, but barriers like set intention, a bubble around your body of positive intention. Have the free will. You do have free will, so you can ask your spiritual guides and higher selves to help you to elevate your frequency. That can help you to understand more about your subconscious mind and dream state. But this idea of mass thought forms, understanding that the movies, the shows, the music you listen to, you don't have to say, I can't indulge in any of it, I need to go live under a rock. I'm not saying that. Be aware of what it's feeling there. Be aware of what it's doing to you. When I watch a so-called Succession, which is pretty much a show on narcissism, is a fascinating, great show to learn about different types of narcissism. But it definitely had an effect on my consciousness every night when I would go to bed. When I was watching Vikings, I'd have dreams every night of being in Viking time, in battles and stuff. And it was really cool. I actually liked that. But the narcissism succession thing, definitely it affects your field if you're constantly focusing on things, thinking thoughts, feeling emotions. It's fueling your field. And what you want to do is elevate your vibration. And if you haven't done the quiz yet, I recently redid the quiz on whatsmyvibration.com. You can click the link below to check it out. Calibrate your vibration, get a meditation for raising your vibration to a completely new level, and then watch how simply doing that changes your life over the course of 21 days. Now, group meditation and meditations in general are so transformative. If you want a meditation that will completely clean out your energy more than anything else, listen to my Raise Your Vibration Permanently meditation right here for 21 days and watch what happens.